Hey everybody, welcome to BODS Mayhem Hour. I'm your host, John the Bod, aka the Bod Father, and as always, bring you guys awesome interviews. Today it is an honor to have Mr. Dave Starr, plus his wife that's with him in this band, Miss London Wilde, on vocals. We're going to be talking to them about their new album. We're actually getting ready to come out on December the 8th, called Beyond the Rain, and they are from Houston, Texas. So, how's it going, guys?
It's
Doing great.
Hey, John, great to be with you.
So let's jump right into this. I'm going to knock this right out here. How's it, your husband and wife, how is it to work with each other without wanting to strangle one another on an album?
Well, for the most part, we get along fine, but of course there's always those moments where there's a disagreement. And yeah, I mean, it can be challenging, living together, working together. But for the most part, I enjoy it because it's just one more thing that we have in common to share. So it's, if anything, I think it adds to our relationship rather than detracts from it.
Our recording studio is in our home, so part of the key to the success is to try to, if there's an argument or a dispute or a issue with something that we're doing that we might disagree on, is to keep it at the door, and then when we exit the studio door to pretend that's like there's an invisible barrier there where we don't carry any of the baggage outside.
Yeah, leave work at work and go home.
That's easier said than done sometimes, but that's the motto we try to do.
I can imagine. But that's awesome you guys are working together like that. That builds the bond even more, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
What's impressed or excited the both of you the most about making this new album, Beyond the Rain? What's caught your eye about, if anything, possibly?
I think the immediate thing for me that comes to mind is this album was this is our third album. This is the most difficult album that we've ever made. And we had, London will expand on this in a minute, but we had multiple deaths in the family while this album was being recorded.
Oh, wow.
And we also relocated from California to Texas. So we went through a lot of the upheaval of moving, and the personal strife that London will touch bases on in a minute here was really made it a difficult album to really complete. And I think that just the fact that we got it done, although it took us a lot longer than the previous two to make, just the fact that we finished it, and we're pretty proud of it. It's a great album. Just finishing it, I think, is an outstanding thing for both of us to sit back and reflect on.
Well, as far as this album was a little bit ambitious in that when I described it to Dave, I said I'm not just writing songs that have random lyrics. I'm telling a story. It's more like a rock opera. Mm-hmm. That I'm, it's not maybe an Operation Mindcrime or a Tommy, but I strive to make it as best as I can. And so I really wanted to I didn't want anything to go out the door mediocre. I really put forth my best effort into writing the melodies and the lyrics and making the overall song as good as it could be. And I feel like I achieved that, but it did take a little more time. And like Dave said, there was an awful lot of distractions during the last 4 years that, kind of took us away from working on the record. But it feels really good to have it done and have it turn out, the way we envisioned it. So that's a huge achievement for us, and we're really proud of it.
This wasn't going to be a concept album when we started, but with the passing of London's brother in the early stages of the songwriting, kind of transformed the entire ball game for us. And London writes all the lyrics and melodies, so she had to delicately handle the experience of dealing with the suicide of her brother Gary and their relationship and other things that went along with that. So it was a tough road to have to go down through for anybody, but we tried to create a piece of art out of it. I mean, maybe that sounds crass, but I don't know. Does that sound crass?
I don't think so.
No, I get exactly what you're saying, and some people in London, I truly apologize to you about that, because I hate for anybody to have to go through anything like that. And, was that something that made you strive harder on this album?
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. It's my brother was kind of a symbiotic twin spirit. We're only, a year apart, and we both have the same, same dreams growing up as far as being musicians, wanting to be the best musician we could. And I could really relate to his struggle. So, losing him, having him give up on his dreams and the way he did was hard for me. And I would say what I was thinking in the beginning was not just telling his story. I felt like I was including him because he never did complete something that was put out in the public. And I felt like this way I was including him almost like an invisible member of the band. So that was a lot of pressure for me because it might sound really strange, but I wanted to do a good job because I felt like my brother was listening, and he's a perfectionist. So I wanted to make him proud at the same time as myself proud. So that was always in the back of my mind, as making something that he would feel proud of. And, it made it, I like challenges. As a matter of fact, if something isn't challenging, I tend to procrastinate. I kind of need big challenges to motivate me. So in a way, that's kind of how I operate in general. I bite off more than I can chew, and then I chew it. So.
Any songs off this new album that stand out more to you guys on it, if any? I know these are like your favorite kids or your collectibles, but any of them standing out more, possibly?
For me, Down Cold is my favorite track because I can really get the emotion and subtleties in my vocals because it's so open with just an arpeggiated guitar. In the verses, you can really hear my vocals more than some of the other songs.
A lot of dynamics in the song.
Yeah, it's a lot of dynamic, and I feel like the emotion came across in that song pretty well. For me personally, I like listening back to that track, and also the chorus has a kind of a retro. It's a retro harmonies that was intentional. That I enjoy. It's a little nostalgic, so I like that song. That track's one of my favorites. What about you, Dave? I know what song you like that.
My favorite is the final track on the album, When the Night Falls. Why do I like it? I think it's one of the, if not the strongest song on the album, and we put it out about a year ago while we were in the midst of trying to get this record done, and people were emailing us, what are you guys doing? When's this record coming out? What's going on? So I told London, we need to put out a track to let people know we're alive.
That happened to be the only track that we were completed on the final mix. It wasn't really a lot of thought process, just, hey, this one's done?
The response to it was just amazing. So I think that really helped me when you get, I believe in everything we do anyway, but when you hear back from fans and listeners, supporters, friends who say, wow, that is just amazing. I think that kind of can't help but not have an impact on you. So that's my favorite one.
I think it's awesome that you guys are a three-piece band. London's vocals are pretty awesome on this. Your guitar playing is always great, man.
Thank
you. Yeah, I have a lot of respect for three-piece bands.
Well, we just
we make a lot of noise for just three people.
Yeah,
yeah, that's true.
We're not a band in the traditional sense, in that I do all the guitars and bass myself on the albums, and have done that for all three of them so far. So that's the role of three people in the band right there. So we just found that it just worked easier for us. In the beginning, we tried to actually assemble 5 people, or 6 people, or whatever in a normal type. And then we just kept running into dodos who were just trying to deviate from the vision that we had.
Well, Dave and I have a very good songwriting chemistry, and it really works for us. So I think eventually we realized that our chemistry, songwriting, and playing, that was what we needed to focus on.
Yeah.
And then Josh came along after our first album, and he's the perfect person. The three of us have a great chemistry working together. So I don't know. We ended up just not wanting to mess with that, and it's working for us.
Now, since this is your third album that's out, getting ready to come out, plus everything that you guys have been through to put this album out, how much growth musically, guys, have you seen yourselves go through up to the release of this album, or has it just been more of a personal growth for all of you that's in this?
Well, I think musically we grow every album we do. I would absolutely say we've reached another level of excellence in our songwriting, in our, musicianship. And for me, it's always cathartic to put down, thoughts or emotions or events. And that way it's easier to move on once you've explored them. And, so yeah, it's a personal growth. And as musicians, I feel like we've definitely grown.
For me, when we made the decision that I was just going to do all the guitars and bass myself on the first album, Arrival, that came out in 2010, I'd only really been playing guitar seriously for a couple of years, and I got clean and sober a few years before. I'd been playing bass professionally for umpteen years before that, and when I made the switch over to playing guitar, it was very difficult for me to do. And when we finished that first album, I kind of thought, oh my God, that was so exhausting. But I pulled it off pretty good. I don't know if I could do this again. And then I decided to do it again, play all the guitars and bass again on Telltale Heart, which came out in 2012. And then I said, you know what? I can't do this again. And I did it again. And I think for I'm just speaking for myself, but for one person to do all of that on 3 straight albums is a hell of a lot of work. And I think you can't do it unless you can really pull it off, and it has to be convincing. So just speaking for myself, I think there's been growth, because if I wouldn't have been able to keep evolving, I wouldn't have been able to do this for 3 albums now. Now I say we're going to take a break and we're talking about doing a side project now, and do something else incorporating possibly some other people 2018, but we'll see how it goes. That's our idea right now. We're not going to stop WildeStarr, but we might just try to deviate a little bit from the path, but to try something different as a side project. But for me, I can see growth as a songwriter, as a guitarist, from album to album, just to be able to keep up the frantic pace of doing what I did. It was pretty challenging, to say the least.
I want to talk about producing. Who produced this album, or did you guys do it yourself?
I guess I wear the producer hat, but absolutely Josh has a big role in the guitar production. Josh and I both share recording tasks. I think on this album I probably did most of the recording though, because he was still in California. But we share production, and Josh does mastering, and we all three have input on the overall sound. So if Josh has some ideas about the sound and I have ideas about the sound, we all come together and make decisions. Dave, he's been a part of a lot of records. So when we're final mixing, I'll say, what do you think about these levels? Dave's got a great ear. So everybody's input and experience goes into the final product, and we spend a lot of time actually on the sound, coming up with the production sound before. Actually, that's the first thing Josh and I do, is we kind of come up with an overall production sound right in the beginning. So yeah, it's a group effort, but I would say the lion's share falls on me.
Now, I know you guys have been doing this for a long time, but do you guys do anything differently during your guys' writing and recording process to help keep your minds open and fresh, and to not let your music get stale?
No.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
We have our routine that works for us. As far as I think we just keep perfecting our routine. And me myself, I listen to a lot of different kind of music and try and keep an open mind about things. But honestly, our our influences lie in the past, and I think they'll always be a really big part of our sound. And you know, Dave and I have been doing this so long. I think creative ideas come from inside rather than external influences. I'd say just our own imagination.
I get asked a lot about influences, and I have all the classic influences, but I'm not the typical guitar player where, like, okay, I like Gary Moore a lot. I like Michael Schenker, Uli Roth. I mean, I could sit here and name off the guys from, Buck Dharma from Blue Oyster Cult, Ace Frehley. I mean, I could sit here and go, but you know what? I don't think I could play one Schenker solo because I never sat down and learned any of them.
Yeah.
I just kind of created my own world and just absorbed music from listening to it, as opposed to, oh yeah, I'm a big Schenker fan. I can play every one of his solos in my sleep.
Yeah.
I never went that route. I just kind of live and breathe, and I absorb the music through my ears and just absorbing everything that goes on in life and somehow transposing that into my music, as opposed to being real technical and mimicking or copying somebody else's licks.
There you go. You hit the nail on the head right there, man. A lot of folks are scared to go outside of that box. You know, they're like, well, this is what who I want to sound like. No, it's your own music. Be your own damn person. You know, let somebody realize that's your sound, you know?
I'm sure I could probably sit down and learn all of Michael Schenker's solos, but I'd rather I enjoy listening to music, and somehow it all comes out in me without saying, like, oh yeah, it's, I can tell you, that's a Schenker riff, or that's a Gary Moore lick, or that sounds like Glenn Tipton there. I don't, because Judas Priest is probably my favorite band, and I don't really know how to play any Glenn Tipton solos or KK Downing solos. I just listen to the music and enjoy it, and I absorb it, and it somehow comes out in what we do.
How's it working with Scarlet Records, guys? How's it been working with those folks?
Yeah, we like Scarlet Records. They've been really good to us and really supportive as far as they like our music. And some of the other labels that we approached had, they wanted every single song to be done before they would even listen to us, and they wanted a wave version. They were just very picky. And when Scarlet, they heard a couple of songs and they said, sounds good to us. And that kind of vote of confidence, made me really, I just like their enthusiasm for our music. It was different than the others. So we like working with them.
The first album, Arrival, we didn't have a record label. We did everything on our own. We literally shipped them from our house. We cut deals with distributors around the world, and we learned some good and bad things in doing that. And when we were getting ready to do the second album, we put out the feelers for, I don't know how many labels, 15, 20.
More, yeah.
There was just something about Scarlet that they seemed to be really interested in what we were doing, and we just ended up going with them. And they sounded really receptive about the new album as well. So we only had a one-album deal with them, and so we didn't owe them another record after Telltale Heart came out, but we ended up going back to them again. So we're with them basically worldwide right now.
What do you hope the fans take away from the new album once they start to listen to it, or just WildeStarr's music in general?
I think it's just real honest. It's real, I think people can sense a real passion in what we do, especially since we're a husband and wife team, which is kind of doesn't exist in the field of heavy metal. If it does, I'm not aware of it. I'm not trying to sound like we're the only people doing this. I don't know. I don't know of any other of a husband and wife couple doing what we're doing. So I think that makes it kind of special. I think there's obviously a special bond when you're married with somebody, and when you're playing with a band and creating art with them, it makes it even more special. And I hope that is conveyed to the listeners.
The music is really personal to us. I mean, our band name is both our last names together. We pour our heart and soul into WildeStarr. So I think that comes across. And I think I think fans of this genre of music will appreciate that it's new music being made in this genre, but it sounds new, and it's something that, you just don't, there's just not a lot of music like this being made anymore, and I think it's special.
What can fans expect at a show from WildeStarr who have not got to see you guys live yet? What can they expect, guys?
That's the $1 million question, because the truth is that WildeStarr exists in the studio only.
Okay.
And this is the $1 million question that always gets asked, not just by people doing interviews with us, but fans email us all the time, asking about this. But it just didn't really when we got, I talked a little bit earlier in the interview about the problems that we had trying to find people who were on the same page with us. So we just kind of circled the wagons and just said, what?
We tried to find people for a live lineup, and we just couldn't find the right match. And I told Dave that I'd rather spend our time making new music than spinning our wheels with this live lineup. Let's just keep going with writing, recording, and see what happens. So that's where we're at now. We have to play live. We need to fill out the band with another guitarist and a bass player, and we haven't, and actually a drummer, because Josh doesn't want to tour. He used to tour. Some people, they don't really enjoy it, especially.
I did an extensive amount of touring when I was in Vicious Rumors, and there were parts of it I liked, parts of it I don't. Since I've been clean and sober, I haven't really had a desire much to go back out on the road. I'm more into just working around the house, working in the studio. We don't need to make excuses as to why we don't tour, because we actually have a pretty full life here in Texas. We live in a huge house on 4 acres basically in the middle of a forest.
That's awesome.
We've got 6 dogs here. London's elderly mother, moved in with us, so we're helping take care of her. We have that responsibility. We have a recording studio here, and we also run 2 businesses aside from WildeStarr. So we have our plate really full, just living life, middle-class couple in the United States. And maybe someday we'll be able to put a band together and get out there and play this. It is something that is in the back of my mind all the time, but right now we're just happy doing stuff in the studio.
If I lived in a big house and 4 acres of land, it'd be like finding where's Waldo when people come to hang out with me. Where's the bod? Come find me.
Yeah.
I live like in a little town in these apartments, and just getting out in big properties like that, I just want to get lost and be left alone. It's like.
Well, it's great because there is enough space for everybody to have their creative personal space, and that's really helpful for us.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now, guys, we're living in the digital era of recording albums, social media, things like that. Do you like this that we're in right now, to getting albums out there quicker, and plus, letting people know about WildeStarr and all these other bands with help of social media now?
Well,
without it, we wouldn't exist. So it's a double-edged sword, because obviously our first album was downloaded a lot of times, and we know that still goes on, but at the same time, because we're not touring, nobody would have known about us. So I think for us, it's great, this era of being able to reach people through social media. It's
kind of a double-edged sword, because as I check Google about 10 times a day for updates on WildeStarr, for interviews and reviews to see what's going on. And about 10 days or 2 weeks ago, the album's already up there for free. And wow. That sucks, but it happens to everybody. All it takes is somebody got an advance copy from Scarlett or Chip, and they took it upon themselves to post it, and then it just gets cloned, and then it's all over the place. So, that kind of stuff didn't go on back in the day, but that's the unfortunate thing. The fortunate thing that when London was saying is, yeah, you can reach out to people instantly, and communicate with people around the world. And that is a great thing that the internet has done. But the internet's been a blessing and a curse all at the same time.
Support-wise, is there a country that stands out more to you or surprises you that you get support from that area?
Yeah, South America. Is it Brazil that we have? We didn't even have our record released there, but it seems like we gained a lot of fans and attention just by social media.
And I think Europe, probably Germany, and the heartland of Europe, Germany, Italy, Spain, Belgium, France, the UK. I think we're selling a lot of records over there. We hear probably more from people over there than in the States. It's hard in the States because, the country is so big and there's so many people and there's so many diversions. But, and we're selling records in Japan too. If I had to pick one country or one area, I'd say it would be, the heartland of Europe, probably Germany.
The bad part about here in the U.S., and I'm just going to say it, I've said this a lot, it's that people's attention span for music is like, hey, look at that. Oh, look, there's a squirrel. I mean, it's like that quick and gone.
Well, the problem is, in today's world, there are so many avenues for entertainment. When I was growing up, there weren't that many avenues for entertainment, and listening to records, especially if you're a young person, was probably the best kind of entertainment you could get. These days, there's so much more options. There's people are on their cell phones. There's social media, video games. I mean, there's just a distraction of every color and type. So that is true. I mean, people don't have the bandwidth.
Tough. And that's one of the curses of the internet is that, see, in the old days, when I'm 56, so when I was playing in Vicious Rumors, when we got signed to Shrapnel, did 2 albums, and we got signed to Atlantic and did 3 albums. Back then, in the 80s and 90s, early 90s, if you didn't have a record deal, nobody knew who the hell you were. And there was really only so many bands that had a visible profile because of that. Whereas today, every band, good and bad, and I'd say the vast majority of them are bad. I won't name any names, but it's just that every band now has a worldwide platform. Hey, look at me, listen to me. And the majority of it in the old days, and I make myself sound like a fogey by saying back in the old days, but in the pre-internet days, 99% of these bands that are on the internet now, you would never hear of because they would never get signed, because record companies would never want to have anything to do with them. So you have X amount of people on the planet, probably not significantly greater than it was 20 or 25 years ago, but instead of 200 bands playing heavy metal worldwide, you've got 2 million bands playing worldwide, all fighting for the same audience. Mm-hmm. So you do the math, and it makes it harder. It makes it harder for everybody. But you know what? I'm not complaining about it. I'm just explaining it maybe to somebody who wasn't around back in the day before the internet.
You're right.
The genie's out of the bottle, so we have to go with things the way they are.
Yeah, I agree with you 1,000%, man. I'm 38. And I remember when I was a kid reading Circus Magazine, Hit Parader, magazines like that. And, I remember seeing a lot of the bands talk about getting record deals. And even the bands back in that day that didn't get signed, that's all they talked about. We need to get a record deal. We need to get a record deal. Yep. Versus today, well, we need to get 1 million hits on YouTube.
Yep. It's a whole different ballgame.
It is.
I'd like to think at the end of the day, the bottom line is the cream will rise to the top. That doesn't always pan out. But it's just that at the end of the day, you still have to pick up your guitar, you have to sing into the microphone, and you have to make music. And people are either going to like you or they're not. And that's the way it is.
I do this daily, guys. I see all the stuff that I get and I have to go through. And I'm not... Go ahead.
Well, I get all the time. People say like, "Oh, can you check out my band and can you listen to this or check out these friends of mine?" And I don't know what to tell people. Most of the stuff I hear is horrible.
Yeah, I'm not knocking any band or anything, but I mean, it's just there's just a lot of stuff that it's just oversaturated and it all sounds the same in my book.
Yeah. And I'm not too into the Cookie Monster type vocal stuff and just the let's be as heavy as we can and throw art out the window. I like to hear melody. I like to hear a balance of melody, passion, aggression, power, harmony, whatever you want to call it. And a lot of those things don't necessarily exist today. Sometimes people think, some of the younger generation, I think, might listen to somebody like London or Rob Halford or one of the, the great singers like classic Jeff Tate or Dio and think that stuff's soft. It's not soft, it's real.
That's exactly right.
It takes a lot of talent to be able to sing like that.
Yeah, you don't want to write a love song in death metal vocals. Love you.
Well, it's yeah. I don't really have an interest in that. It's kind of a limiting art form, in my opinion. Obviously there's a market for it because there are people doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've listened to some really heavy stuff that I like, but one of the great things about being in WildeStarr is we can be super heavy and we can also do a ballad. And because the kind of music that we do fosters an appreciation in the fan base for covering a wide spectrum of sounds and not being one dimensional. I think I said that pretty well.
That was pretty awesome. That was pretty good.
Yeah. Now, if a death metal band or some super heavy band tries to do a ballad, they'll get shit thrown at them.
Oh yeah, they would.
Yeah.
People would leave the show.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. So for the both of you, what made you want to become a musician? What was that spark that said, yeah, that's what I want to do?
I grew up around musicians, and I wanted to be a musician. I just didn't know what instrument I wanted to play until I was about 14, and I bought the album Rainbow Rising, and I heard Ronnie James Dio sing, and then it clicked with me. That's what I want to do. I want to sing, and I want to sound just like that, which I could, I had physical limitations as far as my voice doesn't have that deep tone, but I sure tried for a while. That was the first thing that motivated me, was hearing Dio's voice to want to sing.
For me, I was a sophomore in high school. It was 1976, and a friend of mine said, you got to check out these guys Kiss. And I'd heard of them, but I had not heard them before. And he loaned me Kiss Alive, and that was it. Changed my life. Like a lot of people from my generation were totally blown away by the whole experience of Kiss back in the day. And that's what did it for me. Kiss Alive launched my career, or ruined my life, as my dad would say.
Oh, I've been doing this show for 7 years, and January makes 7 years. And this is the first time I've ever said this on one of the interviews. But if I could be any singer, as far as like what changed, got me into music a lot, is I would love to have a voice like Bon Scott from AC/DC.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a unique, one of a kind voice, and yeah, I mean that's.
Yeah.
That just brings up a whole nother thing. As soon as you said that, I thought of Malcolm Young passing away.
Yeah.
Great songs that he wrote with his brother, and just how all that generation is dying off, and it's really scary.
It is very, very scary. But it's like I said around the thought, though. Malcolm suffered for a year or so, guys, and then I just hate to see him go through stuff like that. But
well, I don't have any influence on Angus, but I really hope he puts AC/DC to rest, and not. Cliff Williams is retired, and
yep.
Those guys have written some great songs and great albums over an incredible history, but. If they come out with all the whole new line, I hate it when bands change lineups. It just drives me crazy.
Axl did okay for the vocals when they went on
tour.
He
actually did. I was actually surprised.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to suck, because I was never really a big Guns N' Roses fan, but I actually thought he did a pretty good job, and I'm man enough to admit it. But when I read other comments on the internet, people said the same thing. They said, "Oh, this is just a train wreck in the making." But a lot of people said the same thing. They said, "Wow, this actually sounded really good."
You know, one of my favorite songs by AC/DC, and this is a song that I think is really underrated compared to what their I guess mainstream stuff is "Touch Too Much." I think that song is so damn underrated.
Well, those guys wrote so many great songs using 3, 4, 5 chords. It's amazing.
Sure. Oh yeah.
It's amazing. Yep. And very rarely, when you think of AC/DC, very rarely does a band lose its lead singer at a relatively young age and then go on to even bigger stardom with the replacement, like they did with Brian Johnson.
They could.
I mean, they were big with Bon Scott, but they got 10 times bigger with Brian Johnson.
You know what, Dave? They could have found anybody else better to fit his shoes. You know?
Yeah.
How can folks stay in touch with you guys? Buy this new album that's going to come out, some merchandise, and if you guys decide to take this on tour, how can they do that, guys?
Well, our website is a good place to go, which is www.WildeStarr.com. But actually, Facebook is a pretty good place to contact us or to see what updates or what's the latest. That's probably gets updated even after.
I'm staying on top of the Facebook stuff and posting the interviews and album reviews as they come in. I just did the Brave Words interview today. We did it about a week ago, but just posted it today. So, yeah, and that's WildeStarr.com, WildeStarr.com, for all the latest news and information.
Before I let you guys go, would you care to do a promo for the show?
Sure. Hey, everybody, this is Dave Starr and
London Wilde.
We are WildeStarr, and you're listening to
BODS Mayhem Hour.
Turn it up.
Everybody stick around. We got some great music coming up, and you only hear these interviews right here on BODS Mayhem Hour and Uber City Radio. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Now